As quilters, we're always excited to learn a new technique or method that's going to help us finish our quilts more quickly and perhaps with a better finish. And for me, because I'm a visual learner, I need to see this. And that's the way I do my tutorials. I like to show you what I'm doing, and in a way that you can then turn it around and make it work for you. And that's what I'm doing here today. You see this quilt behind me. I made it a while back, and I'll link that below so you can see how the quilt is actually made. But what I want to do is show you how I quilted it. It's a very simple, easy method. It uses a walking foot, which makes it go so much more simply. And it's a great, easy pattern, just a meandering stitch that you can do quickly. But the trick is starting from the corner, and I'm going to show you how that's going to make it all the easier. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and see how we can quilt this together and get it done quick. You'll be quilting your quilts and getting them finished before you know it. So let's go ahead and get started, but please do subscribe and give me a thumbs up. I'd love to have you follow along and see more quilting and share other ideas with you. So I'm ready to get started. Let's go. If you have lots of strips, fat quarters, jelly rolls, layer cakes that you can cut into 2.5 inches wide, then this is a perfect quilt for you. You're going to really enjoy this. I've actually made it before, and I'm going to link the original up above. It has all the instructions on how to make it, and that one is from fat quarters. The second link I'm going to put up there is for the version made with layer cakes. Now, I'm just giving you a rundown of how this goes together because what I want to focus on today is how to quilt this. And so with a bunch of your random strips, you want to cut them down to 10 inches long. Each piece will measure 10 inches. You're going to pair them up together, and I show you in the other videos, there's a number of different ways, some really nice shortcuts that will save you quite a bit of time. But you want to sew two together, and I go through and I chain stitch them all and sew everything that I need. Then I'll come back and I'll put the third one on, and maybe I'll put it here, maybe I'll put it here. And that's kind of the fun with this. You can mix and match all kinds of fabrics and colors and designs and patterns. But once you have your 3 strips, now we're going to add the piece that really sets this quilt apart, and that's the 2.5 by 6 inch rectangle. So you see I have my three 10-inch rectangles, my strips sewn together, and you could also do this as a strip set. So that's another way that can help save some time. But you run your 3 together and you put this piece across here, and now this is the block we're going to assemble our quilt with. 10 inches, 2.5, and they're 6.5 wide. And so it works out really well. The finished quilt block itself is 6 inches by 11.5. So if you want a square quilt, you're going to have twice as many wide as you do long. But it's very easy to calculate into multiple sizes. And my goal is to have a pattern for this at some point because it really is a fun quilt. So it's just simple steps, put them together. You have your 3, you add your piece across, and then what you're going to do is sew them together in strips. Now, when I sew these, I do them in a chain stitch method, and I'm going to sew them across and just go this way, all the rows at one time. But the beauty of this quilt is I thought about leaving it like this because this is kind of fun to have this straight line with mixed blocks, mixed prints, but I didn't want to have to match both those seams. So what I did is took every other row and flipped it. And so now you see that this one has the short piece, the rail or the post, if you want to call it that, because this is technically a rail fence. It doesn't look like your traditional rail, but that's okay. It's an awesome looking quilt, and it's beautiful with all these prints. It is great for tons and tons of different fabrics. So now we're going to get this offset, which is really, really pretty. Let me get another piece in here and show you. So this one would kind of come in like this. There we go. We can almost see it. So you can see how we get this offset post that goes across against the direction of these rails, and it just adds a wonderful pattern. So I wanted to give you this rundown before I get it all finished, put it together, and then we're going to quilt it, and that's what I want to show you is a fun way to quilt this. And it's easy. What I like about it is starting in the middle, we're going to do it diagonally, and then as we move to the edge, we have less and less to deal with in the machine. And that makes it so much easier because that throat area in the machine can be very difficult to deal with when you have a big quilt packed in there. So here it is. We're going to make this. If you're going to do some blocks, go ahead and pull them together. Try a couple and see how they work for you. And then you can do a little sample quilting with me and give it a try. So give me just a moment to put all this together. And the quilt top is assembled and ready to go. And I have it all set to quilt, so I used my spray base. I've got my 505 temporary adhesive. This stuff works great. And I have my quilt basted, and you can see just how well the adhesive holds. Everything just stays together nicely. And so I have a pretty batik on the back that I really liked, sort of a tropical leaf, beautiful blue with some nice greens, and I think that works with the front of this quilt nice. I like it. And so what I'm going to do is show you how to machine quilt this easily. A lot of times when we get a large square or rectangle, it can be difficult to quilt once we get into the middle section because there's just so much quilt on both sides that we're trying to figure out how to hold it, how to manage it, how to work our way through without stretching or pulling. So what I'm going to do here is one of my favorite and absolute easiest machine quilting. I use my walking foot, and I'm going to start in the corner, and I'm going to work to the opposite corner. And what I'm going to do is, you've seen me use this before, is my curvy S or my lazy S, whatever you want to call it, and just go from one corner all the way over to the other. But in order to figure out what to do with all this stuff on the side, I am going to roll this up just like this. I'll start with the shortest, or the corner right there, and I'll roll this up until I get, you know, within reach of my corner where I'm going to start. And then as I put this into my sewing machine to start quilting, this is the part that will go on the right side of the needle, so that I'm not going to have all this quilt, you know, bunching up on the side and trying to figure out where it's going to go. So I do my first line, and then I'm going to come back and do my second line. And as I go, I'm going to unwind this. I'm going to unroll it as I quilt, so it gets easier and easier with less bulk to deal with. So basically you're doing the toughest part first, and once you manage through that, then you're good. And then we come around to the other side, and we start on the opposite corner, and we do the same thing. So at this point, this side over here would all be quilted, and we're going to roll this up, and I don't do a tight roll. I don't want to, you know, put some serious wrinkles in here or mess with my basting, and potentially bunch things up. Just gently roll it so that it's going to work and lay well for you as you're sewing. So at this point, we come through here. Now there's one other thing that I do, because there's a couple different things to consider when you're doing a diagonal. And on small pieces, it's easy just to draw a line from corner to corner and follow that. But because we're using a wavy or a curvy S, that gives us a lot of flexibility, and the accuracy is not going to be critical,
because we're just sort of meandering from one corner to the other. So the other thing I do while I'm quilting is I will take this corner, and while this is still rolled up, and I'm going to take this corner here, and as long as I leave an equal amount on each side, I can see where I'm heading. And then I'll bring this down, and then I'll go this way, and just sort of work your way, and you're going to work your way all across the quilt until you get to this other corner. And when you get down here, you'll get to the point where you're quilting, and then you just open it up and you finish it off right here. So I'm going to show you how to do that, because once you lay in this first row of quilting, the rest is easy. If you're more comfortable with either putting pins or marking it in some manner, you know, that works too. But I found that this is just something that works very well. And the key is that as you're going across, because this is pretty much square, that if I keep these sides equal, then I know I'm going to be going across in the general right direction. And I'll tell you, one time I was doing this and I didn't use this corner trick, and it was a king size quilt, and it was just, you know, crazy big. And I thought I was going all the way down to the other side. Well, somehow I ended up at the other corner, the adjacent corner. Rather than going all the way across, I kind of came in the middle, and I curved and I did things, and it worked out fine. It was just kind of a silly mishap and not paying attention. So I found that, you know, putting this this corner really helps me to get myself on track and stay where I need to be and find my way. So let me go ahead and get this set up in the machine and show you how we're going to do this.
To begin, we want to attach our walking foot to our machine, which means we have to take our regular presser foot off and replace it with the walking foot. Now, for more detailed information, you can watch, I'll link above the kind of an introduction on the walking foot and how it works, and some of the, you know, tricks and tips to making it as effective as possible. And I always give it a little nudge with the screwdriver to hold it in place. Now, I am going to adjust my stitch length. I generally quilt with about a 2.5, or I generally sew and do my piecing with a 2.5. I'm going to machine quilt with a 3. If you're using a particularly thick, heavy, or dense batting, then you may want to go to a 3.5. But I use the low loft. I really like the low loft batting. So what I'm going to do, just like I showed you earlier, I have my roll to the side over here, and I'm going to start in this corner, and I'm going to weave my way through, and just go ahead and get started, and then I'll show you where we go from there. Whoops, I need my gloves. You know, it's funny, I always start quilting without my gloves, but the moment I put that needle in the fabric, I know that I'm missing something. So there we go. It just helps to get a better grip. Okay, so here we are. And I kind of like to hold it. I guide this side, and I tend to hold this side. You'll find what works well for you. And then I am just going to do a long meandering S curve. Just like this. And then, as I said, I'm going to grab my other corner, and I will put this right here, and my actual corner's right on that spot there, if you can see right here. So it's between these 2 points. So I'm just going to set that here and make sure those are equal distance, and then just go ahead and make this go all the way through. All right, let's pick up where we left off here.
And we're just going to continue coming around in a curve towards our point, and notice how we're just doing just a long, lazy curve. There's nothing, difficult, technical, and it's going to be strictly a matter of what you like. And so as I'm going along, I'm unrolling this, so I have plenty of room. And I'm bringing my corner up here, and as I do that, excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a head cold today. As I do that, I just sort of bring it to where I need, and I check against the other end of the quilt to make sure I'm going in the right direction. Go like this, and bring it down to here. And you can make some of the curves longer and others shorter. There's no right or wrong. There's no specific method other than just making it smooth. You don't want jagged points. And so one of the first things is when you stop, always stop with your needle down, because that way when you go to start again, your fabric hasn't moved. Your quilt is in the same place. Otherwise, it can jump over, and then you've got those little, notches going every direction. And just kind of keep coming down, and I'm checking my corner, make sure I'm going in the right direction, and see how this is folded up over here. You can't really see a lot of it. Let me see if I can adjust the camera a little bit here. Okay, here you can see a little bit more. And just kind of come through. And now I'm getting to the other corner. And I'm just going to hang on to this roll here. It sort of helps me guide my fabric along. Include any extra threads. I'll just bring it through. Okay, so we're just about to the opposite corner, and this will be our first row completed. And let's see, I can do one more, and then I should be able to just take it from there. And you notice how the walking quilt just makes it so nice and smooth, and it doesn't bunch anything up. It just feeds the fabric nicely, and it works great. There we go, and it comes right off the corner. All right, row 1 finished. Now the next step is to consider how far apart you want your stitching. Now let's just take a look at this as we move our way back to the top. So you see, some are small, and I get distracted. I'm talking, and it doesn't all work out evenly, but that's quite all right. Oh, here's a spot where I bumped sideways. See where you get that little hop right there? I started with the needle down, but then I turned the fabric. So when you start sewing, start in the direction where the fabric is, and then move it. Because if you move it before you start sewing, you're going to get the little thing like that. Now that's not bad. I'm not worried about it, but it's a good example to show you. So with your batting, one thing to keep in mind is battings are all made differently, and they have certain requirements or recommendations on how far apart your quilting can be. Now this one is the what is it? The Fairfield. I really like it. It's a low loft cotton, and you can go up to 8 inches apart. Now I don't want to quilt that far apart, though I can. I prefer not to. I like to have my quilting a little more close. Now I'm not into the the 1 inch or the 1/2 inch. That's just way more than I care to get into, but I'm thinking 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Now where this curve came this way when I started, I'm going to start this curve in the opposite direction. And so they're going to kind of meander along the same way, but it's not going to be identical. because trying to replicate this and do it side by side is tough. It's easier to do on a straight line, but on a curve it can be very difficult. So I'm just going to go ahead and start right here and just sort of meander in. Now, you don't want to make all your rows exactly the same, so on some of them you can make your curve shorter, and you know, you kind of alternate, have some long lazy curves, and then have others where they're deeper and they maybe go in a bit farther. It just creates a bit of interest. And like I said, there's no right or wrong. It's about what you prefer, what you like, what you're comfortable with doing. And this is just, you know, a fun and easy way to get some quilting done. And stop with the needle down, don't move the fabric. I'm going to grab my roll here. And I don't have to use the corner from the other end, because all I have to do is stay in line with this quilting, the first line of quilting that I did. And so we'll kind of come out this way, and I'm going to keep this rolled up and just pull my way through. And we'll go all the way. Now see, once we get that first row in, do you see how much more quickly this quilting goes? Because it's all in place. You have your line to follow, you know what direction you're going, your quilt is basted, everything is set, and all you have to do is just sew along. And it goes quite quickly, actually. So let's get down here. So I'll do one more row to show you, and then we will go ahead. I'll just finish off this side, and then we'll flip it over and I'll show you. But I do want to do one more row, just so you get an idea of how it looks. So this went this way, this went this way, so I'm going to put this line this way. And that way I know I'm not going to be identical all the way through, because I like the contrast of the opposing curves. I just think that looks nice. And you want to kind of keep an equal distance. This is what, probably, well, about 2 inches. And so I'll come down here and get my thread. There we go. So I'll come down this way. And I'm just going to cruise along here. All the way through, and see, I can just keep it moving, and I alternate one hand with the other to keep that fabric going. Now you do want to be careful when you have your roll to the side that you don't have any other pieces of your quilt getting caught underneath here, because nothing is worse than finishing a line of quilting to find out you have more quilted in there than you had intended. And that's not an easy fix. It takes some time and effort. It can be quite frustrating. So just always kind of keep an eye on what you're doing and where everything is. All right, I'm going to stop right here. So you see my roll is still caught up right there, which is great. I'm just going to keep coming down. We're just about to the other end. And just keep sewing. The walking foot does all the work, keeping the fabric right where it needs to be. And I'm just going to go off right there. And that's that. So let me go ahead and finish this side of the quilt, then I'll flip it around and show you how that works. As you're quilting and you get close to your corner, one way to find out if you're even, you know, an equal distance from that corner on each side, is to hold your corner right here and then hold your quilt side to side with that corner in the point, like right here. And then when you open this up, you can see that, let me see right here, this way, there it is. So my quilting is a little bit lower on this side than that side. That's not really much, and that could just be the last curve. But what I might do on this next row is give a little extra space so that as I approach the corner, I'm going to, you know, kind of hit it at the right angle as opposed to coming in, you know, alongside the corner instead of directly perpendicular to it. So that's just another way to check yourself as you're getting close to the end, is just see how far you are from this corner where you want to finish to where you are now right over here, and just measure that distance against the other corner, against the other side, and see where you are. So I'm going to probably just come down a little bit more here, and that'll help me to stay on track and have a nice even finish on that corner. And again, it's not a critical thing by any means, but for me, I think it just looks better to have that last few rows of quilting to be evened up at the corner. So I want to do a couple rows here and show you what I'm talking about. From that corner, or that side, and this is where we are here, and you can see that it's a bit off. This is closer down here. Now, this is not an exact square, this quilt top, so it's not going to be, you know, an exact quilt pattern, but that's okay. I can make it, you know, work and get pretty close to where I want it to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew across here real quick. I'm getting down to the end, and it's coming really fast. It's going to be finished before we know it. So see how we're just coming down to this corner, and each row gets a bit shorter and shorter. I just kind of meander along. And see, we're pretty close. They're going to work out well. So I'll come here and right across this way. And I'm going to be finished here in just a moment, or at least with this side. And then the other side will go together easily. Oh, just making sure I didn't flip anything over. Because we have that first quilting line in place, all we need to do is flip the quilt around, and then we'll work from the other side. We'll do the exact same thing, just in the opposite direction. So see where this is a little longer than this is here? So if I just take a wider bit, you know, a wider quilting line, a wider space, and kind of bring this in a little bit. And I'm just kind of going as we are here. There we go. Like that. And then we come down to the corner. And I'm going to go this way. Alright, there we are. So that's quilted. Now I'm going to turn it around to the other side, and I'll show you how we're going to work from there. And I've turned my quilt around. We're working from the other side. So here's the center that we did our first quilting line, and all this over here is already quilted. So we're more than half finished. This is also a good time to check your bobbin. And this takes a lot of thread because we're doing just lots of quilting from one side to the other. And once I start on a side, I rather go all the way through than have to stop and change a bobbin midway. And so I always check my bobbin. When I quilt, depending on the size of the quilt, I always have extra bobbins loaded and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to repeat what we did in the other direction and just finish it off this way. So you can see I have my rolled quilt here, and that gives me something to hang on to. And I just want to feed this because initially it's going to be a bit heavy because all of this is going to be feeding through. And once you get a couple of rows in, it all becomes a bit lighter because we're working right out to the edge of the quilt, which is wonderful. Working away from the center where all that bulk is. All right, so we're just going to work right down, and I just sort of meander along. And work my way through. About to the other end. And I would say as you're quilting, you don't want to get closer than 1 inch. Sometimes that can create some bunching in your fabric and your quilt top. So I prefer to keep a little bit of space right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just finish this quilt, and I'll be back and show you. We'll do that final corner on this one as well, just to show you one more time how that works. Alrighty, I'll be right back. And we're moving right along here, and you can see I'm down to the end of the corner. And if I fold from the corner and I take this quilting line and match it up to the other quilting line, that'll show me just how close I am, and I am within 1 inch, so that's not bad. And that gives me a little room to play with. So I'm just going to keep doing my meandering line here and run it alongside the previous, and then we'll just take it right down to the end. So this is really a simple way to do your quilting, and it's very easy and it's forgiving. I particularly love working from the middle on a diagonal because one of the hardest things for quilting in a machine like this that has just this small area is that there's no room for all that quilt. I know I've done king-size quilts on this machine, but it was not easy. And you know, it's like you're wrestling this huge rolled up anaconda that kind of wants to fight back, and it makes it a challenge. All right, let's see where I'm going here. We're getting there. Okay, so we're just going to come along here. Just a couple more rows and we will be finished. Almost. Here we go. Just work your way through. I think after this there'll just be one more short little stitch in the corner to kind of hold everything in place. There we go. And now the next trick will be to trim it and bind it. And I'm going to leave a link for you up above that will show you how to easily trim your quilt to get a good square quilt and then add your binding. So I'm going to go ahead and get this finished, and I can't wait to show you.
Here's a finished look at the quilt with the binding. It's all quilted. You can see it going from one corner to the next, and you can see it finishes, let's see, at 42 by about, I think it's 44 to 45 inches. So it's not exactly a square, which is why as I was quilting along corner to corner, I sort of fudged my way along the edges to get into that corner. And that works fine. Just take a little wide, what do I want to say, a wide space between your quilting here and here. And because you're doing the meandering S or long curve like that, it gives you a lot of flexibility in making those kinds of adjustments. So this works really well. It's a great option. As you can see, it went rather quickly, and it's a fun way to finish a quilt. And this is such a great quilt. I love Scrappy quilts, and what a fun way to quilt a Scrappy quilt. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you're ready to get your own walking foot and do some machine quilting and finish up some of those quilts. Thanks so much for being here. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.